Welcome to another episode of the Daring to Transcend podcast. Today, I am super excited to introduce to you an executive from Salesforce who is a phenomenal woman. Her name is LaShonda Anderson-Williams, and I am really excited to have her here. I'm Karen Ann Bullock, and please join me for this really fascinating interview. Welcome, LaShonda, to the show today. I am really excited to have you, and I'm just going to give our listeners just a little bit of information about you, but I'm going to mostly let you tell your story. But LaShonda is the EVP and Chief Revenue Officer at Salesforce Global Health and Life Sciences. She brings 20 years of industry and technology experience to her role. She leads 900 plus sales and solutions professionals and a $1.4 billion business. She is passionate about developing strong and diverse teams, making others great, and delivering exceptional results to her customers. So welcome, LaShonda. I am really thrilled to have you here today.
Hello. Thank you so much, Karen. And I'm really, really appreciative of having the opportunity to spend some time with you. And you mentioned a couple of things I've been able to do in my career. I can't believe, 27 years, I think about that. I can't believe I've been in this industry for that long, but it's been a blast. 27 years of being in technology has been quite an experience. Just my earlier years, started my career off at IBM back in the day, and moved from IBM to Microsoft, and then now at Salesforce. And what a journey, what a ride, and what a lot of lessons learned. So I know we'll get into some conversations about some things I've experienced, but it's been a great journey on my career. And then on the other side of that, I'm a mom. So I have 3 kids, I have a husband, and so trying to balance and traverse having a career, being ambitious, and being a great mom and a great spouse, and finding time for self has been always an area of interest for me, to try to find that balance that we all are striving for, that seems to always elude us. But I've been really, really intentional about finding that balance over my 27 years, and still in the journey to figure it out.
It always is and always changes. And we were talking a little bit before we started recording today, and I want to come back to that just a little bit, because I love what you said about going from IBM to Microsoft, to Salesforce, all technology companies, all different versions of technology, and the technology obviously in your career has changed tremendously. I mean, there was no such thing as a Salesforce when you started at IBM, right? And the whole software as a service and all of that stuff has evolved. So just briefly, and then I want to dive into more about your personal journey, but how has all of that changing technology and working for those technology companies impacted your life during that time period?
Yeah, I think it impacted me and continues to, I think, in a couple of areas. It's reminding me of a company, when I was at Microsoft, there was a company that one of my teams supported. It was called CITOC. And it's CITOC, and that stands for change is the only constant. And so if I had to sort of, characterize what I've learned and how it's affected me, is just coming to the point where I acknowledge that change is inevitable, and change really is the only constant. And so through those different companies, I've experienced just lessons on leadership, and lessons on career development, and lessons on finding about how to figure out what your superpower, as we like to call it, or your strengths are. Finding out what's important to me as a person who has an ambitious sort of career aspiration, but also wanting, to be a great mom, how to really think about career planning and having to balance, my personal life. It's taught me about technology, and that the thing that we, sort of assume would be the future is actually here. And so figuring out how to leverage the future in a moment of sometimes uncertainty has been quite the journey and experience. And then lastly, I'd say is embracing the fact that we are in a place where we're seeing things that we only dreamed of. At least I did as a child. I grew up watching the Jetsons and seeing George, the Jetsons family, like talk over a little video, that's FaceTime today. And just watching that happen in real life. And we're in this new world of artificial intelligence, generative, I should say, artificial intelligence, because predictive AI has been there. And now thinking about what does that really mean for not only my company, my teams, our customers, but my kids, and how that's going to transform the industries that we have not even yet discovered that we need to focus on. And so I think tech has been great because it's always been an accelerant. It's been a challenge. We've seen new entrants, new companies started, new competitors. And that to me, as a person who's very ambitious, gives a great opportunity for me to say, let me invest and learn and figure out how to take some of that insight and knowledge and perspective and apply it to what I get to do every single day in my career and with my family.
Yeah, which is really exciting. And and to your point, that really is the beauty of technology. It really has opened up so many opportunities that we don't even know what those opportunities are yet.
That's right.
We really haven't even envisioned all of them. And, as someone who loves technology, I spent a lot of my career in technology too. And I love what it can do and I love the conveniences, but it also can be, to your point, a huge distraction too, right?
That's right.
Technology can be a valuable tool, but it also can be a huge, huge distraction. So you talked about wanting to, find that balance, that elusive, that elusive balance in your life, and being super ambitious as you've, moved up the ladder, because clearly you've had an incredibly successful career, with all those changes and the huge role that you have now at Salesforce. What have you had to give up to get there? What has this journey cost you?
I wouldn't say it cost or I gave up anything. I think it caused me to think about prioritization. And so I don't ever feel like I've given anything up because I've been sort of determining my career path and plans on my own terms. And so when I think about these just moments of opportunities or challenges, it is about prioritization. Different seasons in my life. I mentioned I'm a mom. I've got 3 kids. My kids' age range from 28 to 17. So there's a pretty wide range. And so at different points in my career, I had the ability to, work, in the office, and that was great. And I was there every single day. And then now in my career, I'm working remotely and I'm traveling a lot. And so the trade-offs sort of varied based on where I was in my career and my ambition. And, some commitments I said to my family and myself of things I wouldn't miss, like, participating. My kids were all very active in sports and academics. So certain moments we just agreed that I wouldn't miss. And so I'd find a way to get there. And so it caused me to really be thoughtful about where to spend my time. And I always say, for women especially, you can have it all, just not all at the same time. And so having that sort of agreement and having a spouse, having to have those conversations about where I'm going to delegate, where I'm going to outsource, like that also had to come into, my decision making, because I grew up, I'm a native Louisiana Cajun. And so my family, my mom, we didn't outsource. She did a lot. She worked and she cleaned up and she cooked every night. And, I had to decide, like, is that going to be my life if I want or not? And so having the decision that I would, sort of outsource certain things that I felt like wouldn't bring me joy or I just didn't want to have to do, and that would give me more time with my kids or give me more time with different projects I was working on. That's how I sort of prioritize versus having to give it up. And maybe giving up cleaning up, that might be a thing, but very good. I was very happy with that. And so it just, it was a journey for me to say I had to let go. And as a female leader and an executive, understanding the demands of the job and the scope and remits that I took on, what was going to be required. So at each stage I progressed, that level of accountability, responsibility, also had an effect on the decisions I made about my family. An agreement of, if I'm going to take this role or this project or this thing on, here's what that means for me, here's what it means for my family, is now the time to do that. And so that was sort of maybe the types of trade-offs I made. And, the balance, again, just came from having, my support system. And we talked a little bit about technology. I use a lot of technology to balance where I need to be, what I need to do, and communication with my family so that we stay in tune with the things that are most important and core to our family values.
Yeah, which is great, and I love that. One of the themes that I'm hearing in what you're saying comes back to something that's super important to me. And actually, I do words for people, and a lot of times I write them down before we start the interview. And the funny thing is, I wrote this word down for you, and it's integrity, right? It's keep making your agreements and keeping your agreements.
That's right.
And integrity is so important in navigating all of this. One of my favorite books is, the Four Agreements, talking about, and, be impeccable with your word. And that is so hard to do because you have so many demands. And yes. I love that you've been very deliberate about the agreements you've made with your companies that you work for, as well as your family, which is just a beautiful way of doing that. So, congratulations on that. That's huge. That's not easy to do.
It's not, and I will not, let me say, I've not been perfect at this every single time, but it became clear to me that what we like to say in my household, that your say-do ratio matches. What you say and what you do actually matches. Where you give your energy is what's most important to you, and where you give your time is what inspires you. And so trying to find those areas to say, I'm going to do this, I'm not going to do that. And that also means, saying no to things. And that's hard sometimes when you want to be everything to everyone. And as women, at times we want to say yes to everything. And at the end of the day, we're exhausted because we've given, from ourselves and an empty cup. And so having the prioritization to say, this is the things I'm going to do and these are the things I'm not, has been really helpful to me to help that balance and, sort of deal with things like burnout and just exhaustion and trying to, do all the things that I know that my mom did, and not saying I can still be a great mom, I can still be a great executive, but it doesn't take or require me to do it all directly myself. I can ask for help and have a support system to get the things that I know that need to get done.
Yeah, which is great. I remember when my husband and I were getting married, we sat down with the minister that was marrying us, and he had us fill out this questionnaire. And part of the questionnaire was, sort of a list of chores, who's going to, is the husband going to do them or is the wife going to do them? And we added the outsource column.
Yeah.
We added a column, and the minister was like laughing at us. He's like, I have never had anybody add an outsource column in all the years that I've given this. I'm like, well, yeah, we're both working. We both have careers.
That's
I'm
right.
an executive. I don't have time for all of these things. So
yeah, and it's okay.
It's okay.
And it's okay. Yeah, you don't have to do all those things to have a great marriage. If neither one of you, quite frankly, are good at it or don't want to do it, outsource it. It's okay.
It is absolutely. So I love that. And outsourcing and getting support is such a critical aspect to this. So
absolutely.
I want to change topics a little, or change direction a little bit on this. So you are now working in the sort of the healthcare area of Salesforce, and the role that you have now, how does that role align with what you dreamed about when you were young?
Well, when I was young, so two major probably moments in my life that kind of come full circle. One, when I was growing up, I always thought I wanted to be an attorney and a lawyer because I wanted to debate and I wanted to be persuasive and have a point of view and wanted to be heard. And so, as a child, my mother was always getting the notes of great student, boy, she talks a lot. They moved me from one student who was quite shy in the classroom. And then the next day, the teacher's like, this kid who was super quiet, we sat her next to LaShonda, and this kid is like talking. And so having the ability to have an impact on the life of other people, like that was always a thing I wanted to do. And the second thing is when I graduated high school, I actually thought I wanted to be a nurse. And so everybody knows the story. I actually went to a nursing school, Texas Women's University, except one small problem. I have a fear of needles. So I went, yeah, this is hilarious. So I actually got accepted. I went to the school, talked to the counselor. We worked through the curriculum and all those things. I said, look, I can do anything except the needle thing. Like, just put me in any class, any curriculum. And so we had this very direct conversation. So that's not how this works. And so we had another discussion about, well, what else do you like to do? And I was like, well, I was student class vice president. And I had a lot of experiences in my high school time being, in student council and class president and an intern. And I said, what about the business side of things? And so I ended up getting a business degree from a nursing school, which is very odd. But what happened was, in my time at this university, the business professors, one of the business professors had a friend who worked at IBM, and they had an intern opportunity, and they were looking for people, to come in and do some technical support stuff. And I ended up being one of the people that my professor nominated, and I'm getting the job. And that's how I got into tech. So I got into tech, going to nursing school from the thought I wanted to be a nurse. And so the fact that I'm now, being able to be in a capacity where I can help people, I can help businesses, I can influence is really great. But more importantly, the healthcare side is fascinating because I'm in healthcare without an MD behind my name. I get to work with a lot of medical doctors, physicians, and clinicians. So I think it's the best of both worlds. But what I would also say is being in healthcare and having opportunity to influence how businesses get the business of healthcare sort of, successful health outcomes is really important, because at the end of the day, the technology that companies like Salesforce and others deliver to these organizations affects people like you and I. So having better care is not just a thing I do for my job. It is a thing I do for me. It's a thing I do for my family. It's a thing I do for my community. It's a thing we do because when these organizations can have better, more personalized care, remove the friction, more lives can be saved, more lives can be extended, better care can be delivered. And so I think it's, for me, the best of both worlds. But it all started with a dream of being an attorney and a nurse. And yet I'm not either, but I'm still doing what I thought I would do, which is helping people be successful.
And, as a salesperson, there's a lot of persuasion, although a little bit different kind of, kind of persuasion than you'd use in a courtroom. But certainly the talking and
engaging with people and representing businesses, representing a point of view and challenging. So, I have some of the most incredible organizations that our company works with in terms of healthcare companies. And they get a lot of options to, we talked earlier, there's so much technology out there, technology of IBM is still around and Microsoft and others, but there's a lot of smaller companies that have been created even through the pandemic. And the ability to use persuasive and impactful perspectives to challenge thinking and assumptions. I get to do that every day with my team and our customers. And ultimately, the same goal exists, which is we can make each other better. We can make the health system in the United States more equitable for everyone to get better care.
Which I love that, and before we started talking, I wouldn't even sort of have even made the connection with Salesforce and healthcare, right? Because, I think of, I obviously, when I was working, when I was in corporate IT, one of my jobs was the CRM system for the customer relation system for our company, which we were not using Salesforce, I will confess. Although I think they are now. But anyway,
we'll talk about that.
We'll talk about that later. That's neither here nor there.
Yes.
But so I know what a CRM is, right? I know what a customer relationship management, but to put that in the context of healthcare,
yes.
I honestly would not even, would not even have crossed me, given how I know this.
No, absolutely.
I love that you guys are taking technology and you're part of bringing it into an environment where you can actually help doctors have better relationships. But it's really enabling relationships, right?
That you're spot on. Like, so when we talk to our customers, to your point, like Salesforce has been known as a CRM company. Our stock ticker is CRM. But if you move from just having a relationship, just B2B, put the patient at the center, having a relationship with your physician, having a relationship with your patient is super important. When we think about healthcare today, my parents have a expectation of what their care needs to look like. They actually want to go into a health system and meet with their doctor face to face, because that's generationally, that's what they're used to. And that's what builds trust. That's their sort of currency for trust, is another human being in front of them. I'm of the mindset that I'm willing to do hybrid because I've got such a busy schedule. I can build trust. I trust the technology. My parents don't necessarily trust the technology. I trust the technology to have sort of a bridge. And if I don't have the availability to get to someone in person, I can use technology like this. My daughter, my oldest daughter, is actually in medical school, so there will be someone in the Williams household with an MD behind their name. But she's in the generation where it's all virtual, and now you've got generative AI, and you've got all this new technology coming into place, and so the currency of trust in a technology like Serum will look differently. But it comes down to trust and relationships, and people buy from people they trust. People do business with people they trust. Healthcare, right now, the medical, I think, environment, the healthcare space is just growing exponentially, but people are having more choice and making more decisions on where they want to get care. And you have companies like Amazon, who actually now opened up a healthcare sort of technology, solution, but they also have a healthcare system. And so, yes, I think CRM is, traditionally been just B2B, but now it's business to consumer, but also physician to patient and patient to system. And that's where Salesforce technology can be applied in a very unique, highly regulated industry to, again, improve healthcare one person at a time.
Which is really fascinating. But, you talk about trust, and I'm going to go back to your career and your leadership. Trust is such an essential part of all of our relationships, regardless, right? And clearly, we all know that there are many areas of our society where there are trust issues.
Yes.
Right. Nobody's going to deny that.
Correct.
But trust in leadership is it's a fundamental aspect of leadership. At least obviously, in my opinion, and I think it's fairly well accepted. How does trust play a role in your leadership and in your career as you're moving forward through this?
Well, I think, it's been said over so many years, and I don't think it's changed. People don't lead companies, they lead managers, they need leaders. So, we spend a lot of time as organizations, small, big, and large, to recruit people, individuals into your businesses, and invest in them and develop them. But there are times where trust is broken and people make a choice to leave. And so for me as a leader, when I'm engaging in leading teams and building teams and onboarding teams, it really is about being clear with what I'm expecting. Mm-hmm. And so my expectation setting at I like to use trust as an action, but it's also a value. So when I think about my values, trust is one of the major values for me, but also transparency and clarity as well. So we talked a little bit about say-do. I'm going to be clear with what I expect. And having that sort of expectations up front is really important to make sure that you have alignment on, here's what we will do together. Here's what I expect of you. Here's what you expect of me as a leader. My job is to invest and develop talent to help people become the best versions of themselves. Sometimes it works out where you can do that. I stayed at Microsoft for 15 years. I stayed at IBM for 10 years. And so that was sort of how things worked before. Now you have so many other dynamics of what trust looks like and values look like, because in my time, the 25 years in those two companies, I went into an office every day. Yeah. Now trust has to be established over technology like this. Everyone's not going into the office. When the pandemic hit, Microsoft and Salesforce and others technology companies hired a ton of people. And myself included, I started Salesforce in 21 and I onboarded virtually. We don't have an office in Houston. So how do you onboard virtually? How do you build trust when you have never met a person like in person, met your leader in person? So I've had to sort of learn and sort of get creative about how I'm building connection, but ultimately building trust with my teams, and building trust around accountability and trust around inspiration and trust about commitment of delivering against our goals, because our goals in these businesses, they don't get small, they continue to grow. But I think it's a journey for all of us, because the dynamics of what the workforce looks like generationally and physically has changed, and we have to adapt. And I know a lot of tech companies, in the Bay Area where Salesforce is headquartered, have struggled with the returning office and trying to get people back to build connection, community, and ultimately trust. And it's worked for some and not worked in others.
Yeah, I think the whole remote working dynamic has changed a lot about leadership and trust building. And there's trust gaps both ways, right? There's the trust gap of I know there were a lot of leaders, and I think there still are a lot of leaders out there, which, has never been has been my favorite thing. But, the leaders that I don't trust that you're working unless I can physically see what you're doing, right?
Yeah.
There is that. And let's face it, there is a subset of people that probably need that, right? Not everybody is really wired or in a good place to work remotely. Some people need that kind of accountability in a different way. There's other people, obviously, many people that really don't, and can work. And so expectations, I love that you bring in expectations, because that's such a critical part of the whole trust exchange both ways.
That's right.
It is, as long as that's clear. And so many people don't do that. I mean, so many people.
There are so many assumptions. And that's where things sort of get a little gray and somewhat confusing to people. And I think, the return to office, return to work thing there's a balance. And I do believe, like, there's bad behavior. Let's be clear. There are people who, you've heard the stories, people working 3 or 4 jobs remotely and no one knew. But there's bad behavior in an office too. So it's not like just because you're working remote, that's going to create bad behavior. I do think, though, as a leader and what I've experienced, one of the things that's really important is connection. And so building connection remotely, building connection in person is important to build trust. And if you're early in your career, one of the things I really spend a lot of time with people I mentor and have conversations around in terms of building a career plan is you have to connect with people. So you have to be very intentional. If you're not in an office, how do you build your brand? How do you build your reputation? Your results will have one part of your brand, but how do you sort of show up literally to people when they think of you and your impact on an organization? So it's really important, while you may not be in a physical office, you have to sort of, mitigate the changes of how you normally would have walked down the hall, had a water cooler conversation or ran into an executive or another leader in the building. You can't do that, on a technology like Zoom or, Google Chat. How do you walk the halls in a, collaboration tool? You can't. So you have to be thinking about
anyway.
Not yet. We're going to get there. So I am all about giving people the ability and the flexibility to be their best version of themselves and giving them space to have the type of impact. But we also have to be very intentional as people want to move up in terms of career progression of how you build relationships with stakeholders and building a collaboration model so that people not only know you by name, but by experience. And that just takes effort and intention if you're not going to be in a physical office on a regular basis.
Yeah, and that makes so much sense, because, I know when I was working in a physical office, one of my favorite things to do, particularly as an executive, was to, walk across the building to my peers,
right,
in another division and knock on their door and say, hey, can you catch up for 5 minutes, right?
Yeah.
To be able to just have those intentional but more casual relationships, right? And so in a way you could do that over Zoom or Teams or whatever.
Or think about if you're in an office and you have like maybe a cafe area or a common area and people are walking in and out, and you go introduce yourself, maybe it's an executive or another leader you've been interested in meeting, and you're like, hey, let me introduce myself and I'd love to get on your calendar. I get a lot of calls saying, I want to get on that person's calendar, but I don't know what to say because I'm not going to run into them naturally in a physical setting. And so, just the intentionality, it's not impossible, but you have to be intentional. And so thinking about how do you build that bridge in terms of driving a new relationship or a new connection. Technology has a role and has a place, but it will never take the place of human connection. And you have to find a way to sort of navigate that. And, working, for a large company like Salesforce today, even coming in, bringing 25 years experience, I was very intentional about, I need to meet these people. I'm going to, and Mark, our CEO, like say, put your face in the place. My face was in the place. I was everywhere. And people say, you're everywhere. I am, because I want to make sure I'm understanding the community of leaders I'm working in, the community of sellers, the community of connections. But I also want to immerse myself in the culture. And I couldn't just do that over Zoom. So I had to know and sort of feel it and experience it on my own, and now be able to translate that as a leader into what that means for my teams and my organization as well.
Yeah, and that's so important. I talk to so many leaders who struggle with, and companies that struggle with communicating culture and via technology. Because when you're in the office, you almost kind of absorb it from you feel it. You absorb it from osmosis almost.
That's right. That's right.
There's a lot more intentionality of it. So technology has given us all these great opportunities, but it's also created some places where we have to, really, to your point, be deliberate about our behavior. And, I love that you were so deliberate about it in going into a new company, because, I know people that onboarded during the pandemic.
It was hard.
It was really, really challenging for a lot of people. So, that's an awesome, way to do that. So I know you are, still relatively new at Salesforce, speaking compared to your other companies.
Correct.
Let's put it that way.
Still learning.
And so, as you're looking forward, you're at an interesting point in your career. You're relatively new at a company. You're starting this. You're at an interesting point with your children, because your youngest is clearly almost ready to fly.
Yeah, we get ready. My husband and I might be empty nesters. Yes,
you'll be empty nesters, which creates other opportunities for you, potentially. So what is next for you? What are your big dreams for yourself?
I think about that often, and I think for me, it's just really making sure I'm living even today, like in the moment of the responsibility I have. But I also am that ambitious person I talked about. I definitely am not going to nursing school, so I'm not going back. Let my daughter get her MD. I'm just on this journey of learning. And so, there's so much more to learn about Salesforce, in our company. One of the things that I've really, in my tenure here, has been really impressive to see is the pace at which we have identified like what the future needs to look like in terms of investments and strategy. And so I'm spending a lot of time taking sort of a step back to say, like, not just about how do we drive results, but strategy. How do we think about the broader ecosystem? And I'm going to continue being this sort of mode of continuous learner. I like to say I may learn it all, not a know it all. And so what's next for me is to continue learning about myself as a leader. And, you kind of called out, like, I'm going to be at a different stage of my life when my last kid takes off. My husband and I have never not had kids. So we're going to learn maybe about each other after we've been married for 28, almost 29 years now. How do we think about, career planning to the next level? I last year joined my first public board, which was absolutely an incredible journey. And I'm super proud and honored to be on the board at Digimar. And so I'm going to spend time, contributing and serving in that capacity as well. And I'm an advisor on a couple of other companies. But my job right now is to learn and help my teams, learn and help my customers, learn and help my community, just be this sort of learn it all journey and make sure that I'm, one of the things I talk about, make sure I'm keeping myself sort of balanced. So what's next is always balancing LaShonda out. So one of the things I will say that a lot of people know about me, fitness and nutrition is a thing that I take a lot of passion about. And so I'm going to maybe crank it up a notch so that I won't have to do drop off and pick up with my son in high school. Maybe I'll have more time on the Peloton. So if you're on the Peloton app or you have the bike, maybe you'll see me. Maybe that's what's next. I'm going to try to get some consistent days and be one of the superstars from Peloton and staying balanced. And so that to me is what's next, is focusing on focus on self-development, but also internal and externally with my career as well.
And what about fun, LaShonda?
Oh, that
was another word that I wrote down for you before we started this interview. What's about fun?
One of the things I love to do, I don't get a lot to do, but it's on my list, is golf. So my husband and I are going to make a little bit of a scheduling so that maybe we can have a plan over the next 12 months of visiting some fun courses that we can both play together. And he's a big golfer as well. So I think that might be the fun for us, something we do together. we live in Texas, so you can only do it to me at certain times of the year. Otherwise, it's just a heat stroke out there. But there's a lot of courses around the U.S. that we've been able to visit. Would love to go play. So maybe that's our fun for the future. But who knows? We'll be flexible because we got time. We're empty nesters. We'll have time and flexibility to go where we choose.
Absolutely. My dad was a big golfer, and that was one of the things he loved, was going around the country and actually around the world in some ways.
That's right. Yeah.
Playing different golf courses and, enjoying that. So I knew my mom played for a while, but it wasn't her thing.
It was a joy.
It was a joy for her, but
yes.
But that sounds like a lot. It is important to have those shared activities.
That's right. That's right. It makes a difference.
And when you move into different areas of your life, stages of your life,
that's right.
It gives you opportunities to open up and try new things. And I love your continual learning, because that is totally what I am all about. I love that.
Absolutely. And I think I'll just close out. I think you use a word that's really important, which is stages of life. And so we talk about balance again, giving up things. I look at it as just trade-offs. And so different stages of my life, being able to drop off and pick my kids up was important at a stage of my life. Now, my son is driving. He doesn't really need us to do that. There's other stages of life that we're going to go through. And so looking at the list of what's prioritized, what's not, and being able to have the flexibility to make those trade-offs and alignment, obviously, with my spouse to, get that next level of, excitement and fun. And, there's a lot of work yet to be done in healthcare. So if I think about what's next, there's still, it's a job that I think we will, myself and those who come behind me, we will always have something to do in helping our technology apply to healthcare systems and life science companies improve healthcare for all human and mankind.
Which is just an amazing ambition. And I have had really, in several of the women that I've interviewed during this series have been involved in healthcare or fintech as several aspects. So it's really exciting to see all the talented people that are, applying themselves to improving different aspects of healthcare in the U.S. and across the world. So that's really exciting. So thank you so much for being with me today, LaShonda.
Yes.
I have truly enjoyed our conversation. It was really
wonderful.
Fun. And why don't you tell people, if they're interested in learning more about you and your career, what's the best way to reach out to you?
Best way is on LinkedIn, and my LinkedIn is LaShonda Anderson-Williams. And I spent a lot of time sharing some of my stories like this and what I'm doing with customers. And so if you have an interest in coming to Salesforce, let me know. You have an interest in healthcare, let me know. But more importantly, if you have an interest in just connecting and being a connector, I'd be happy to engage with people. But I have just enjoyed this conversation, and I am very, very much appreciative of having the opportunity to tell a little bit about my story and myself.
Well, your story is very inspiring. And, that's what we are trying to do here at the Dare to Transcend podcast, is encourage and inspire women to live life fully. And clearly you are on a great path to do that, and an inspiration to other people. So again, I'm Karen Ann Bullock. Thank you for joining us today. We really appreciate it. And if you want to learn more about Dare to Transcend, see other podcasts or my blog, you can check us out on daretotranscend.com, or I'm also on LinkedIn and you can find me there as well. Have a great week, and we'll see you next time.